The city didn't notice his absence, and it barely noticed his return. The skyline welcomed him back with cold glass and synthetic light. The elevator to his penthouse still chimed softly. The world expected him to resume where he left off, but he didn't. He stopped answering calls. The board grew restless. Stocks dipped. Headlines whispered of a health scare, a secret retreat, a silent deal. But the truth was quieter, sadder. He no longer cared. He wandered the corridors of his own empire like a man haunting the walls he'd built. The office atop his tower, once pulsing with movement, now remained dim. Dust gathered. Screens stayed dark. In the silence, he replayed every detail of her walk. Her way of tucking loose strands of hair behind her ear. The way she seemed to carry peace like it was armor. She had vanished from the world, and in her absence, he found himself unraveling. He donated the library to the city. No press release, no ribbon cutting, just a quiet transfer, a silent thank you. He had nothing left to gain from it. One day, he returned to the building. Long after its doors reopened, children whispered between shelves. Elderly readers sat near windows. The space was filled with life again, but not her. In the back, he found her old desk still there, still solid. A new librarian had taken the role. But the drawer still bore faint pencil marks, the shadow of her presence. He touched the wood gently, as if it might speak. That night, he walked the streets without purpose. The city lights blurred into rain. He ended up in the cathedral district, where bells rang into fog. He sat on a bench, alone. No guards, no driver, just silence. In the weeks that followed, his days blurred. He walked more, spoke less. He started sketching on napkins, receipts, old envelopes. Not her face, just fields, sunflowers, books, quiet, places that didn't exist anymore. His financial empire continued to function, but only because it had been built to run without him. His name faded from magazine covers. He turned down every interview, every award, and still, he thought of her, not as a fantasy, not as a possession, but as something he was never meant to hold. He kept the envelope, the photo, the torn page, framed. It hung it in the hallway of a house he never invited anyone into. Not to remember her, but to remember who he was in those years of watching her. Silent, small, humbled, because for once in his life, he hadn't destroyed the thing he loved. The world moved on, as it always does. Cities changed. New billionaires rose. New scandals captured attention, but he remained quieter, older, thinner, and no longer trying to conquer anything. Not even his loneliness. He no longer watched people. He listened, in parks, on subways, in libraries. The silence she once lived in had changed him. He stopped acquiring. He started noticing. One cold November morning, a box arrived at his townhouse. No name, no return address. Just a single sunflower drawn in soft pencil on the lid. He didn't move for minutes. When he opened it, time folded. Inside, a worn journal, a pressed sunflower, and a letter dated 2 years ago. The handwriting was hers. You never spoke to me, but I always knew. The black car that waited too long. The man who never stepped inside. The one who looked, but never asked. I used to wonder why. Then I realized, you were just as lost as I was. Watching me gave you peace. Knowing you were out there gave me strength. We never exchanged words, but you were the only person who ever saw me without asking for anything. I left because I needed to breathe before the world took the last piece of me, but I didn't leave to hurt you. I left to save myself. I hope you found something real, even if it wasn't me. If you're reading this, I hope you kept your silence, the way I kept your secret. He closed the letter with hands that trembled, but not from pain. It wasn't grief, it wasn't regret. It was the quiet ache of finally being understood. Later, that month, he returned to Meadow Lake. No cameras, no noise, just a man walking slower than before. He didn't go to the sunflower field. Instead, he sat outside the diner, ordered coffee, and watched the morning wake up. And for a brief second, he saw her on the other side of the street, walking with a canvas bag over her shoulder. Blonde braid, denim shirt, a shadow of a smile in her step. She didn't look at him. He didn't move. But that was enough, because sometimes love doesn't mean having. It means protecting, even from yourself. He stayed for a week, wrote nothing, said little, then returned to the city. He framed the letter beside the photo, not as a reminder of loss, but as the proof that once, in a city made of noise, he loved something so purely. He let it go. He was a man known only through headlines and numbers. A tech billionaire, ruthless in vision, empty in silence. Boardrooms bowed to him. But in the hours between dusk and insomnia, when the city dimmed, and even skyscrapers seemed tired, he would find himself parked along Fifth Avenue, eyes fixed on a single crumbling building that refused to evolve with time. It was an old library, a place long forgotten by developers and untouched by ambition. And inside, it moving quietly among stacks and shadows was the one thing he couldn't control. She wasn't famous, she wasn't loud. She didn't belong in his world of digital noise. But he noticed her that first winter morning when his driver took a wrong turn and the car paused at a red light. Blonde, wrapped in a soft, oversized cardigan. sorting books like they were fragile secrets.com in a way that felt like memory. From that day on, he watched her, at first from curiosity, then from something deeper. His meetings became excuses. His calls cut short. He timed his drives to match her shifts. And still, she never noticed the black car across the street, or the man inside worth billions who sat frozen as she scribbled in notebooks and sipped chamomile tea. She moved like the world hadn't broken her yet. He envied that. He was surrounded by people who wanted pieces of gym investors, politicians, vultures in tailored suits. But she asked for nothing. She gave nothing. And that, somehow, made her everything. He never stepped inside the library. He told himself it was respect. In truth, it was fear. Fear of ruining her world with his. So he stayed distant, a ghost behind tinted glass, the silent witness to her rituals, arriving at 6:45, unlocking the rusted front door, feeding the stray cat that waited by the steps. She didn't wear headphones. She never checked her phone. She was always present. Months passed, then seasons. He saw her in raincoats and scarves, skirts and mittens. Once, he saw her laugh fretting alone on the steps, sunshine caught in her hair. That moment replayed in his mind for weeks. It haunted him. Then came spring. A child taped a crayon drawing to the library door, a blonde stick figure beside a tower of books. Miss L, it said, and that was all he had. A single letter. Il, and no surname, no digital trace. Just a presence that lived outside the algorithm. He found peace in repetition. Watching her close each evening, turn off the lights, lock the door, and disappear into the soft folds of New York dusk. It was enough. Until one gray morning in early June. She didn't come, not at 6:45, not by 9 o'clock, not by noon. The lights stayed off. The cat remained unfed. A handwritten sign taped to the door, read, "Library closed until further notice." She was gone. No noise, no farewell, just absence. And for the first time in years, the man who built empires with code and control couldn't do a thing. Libraries stayed closed. Days became weeks. The billionaire waited in his car, like a man hoping time would rewind. Each morning he stared at that empty doorway, willing her silhouette to appear, but there was only dust and silence. The crayon drawing faded in the sun, the stray cat stopped coming, and the door, once part of his quiet ritual, was now just a slab of wood guarding a vanished life. He couldn't function. Board meetings were missed, press statements delayed, stockholders murmured, but none of that mattered anymore. His empire felt weightless, hollow. Every decision he'd made for decades had been sharp, calculated. This time, he acted on something else, something raw, but he bought the building. A single call, one signature. The library, its bricks, its secrets, its silence. His lawyers asked questions. He didn't answer. His assistant looked worried. He didn't care. Ownership gave him keys, but not answers. Inside, the air was still the same scent of worn paper and dust. Her mug still sat on the counter. The desk chair was slightly turned, as if she'd just stepped out, but there were no files, no resignation, no forwarding address, not even an emergency contact, no digital footprint, no trace. She had vanished like smoke from a candle. He searched every drawer, until finally, taped beneath her desk, he found Eton old library card. Fragile, yellowing, written in cursive. Elizabeth Rennet. Wasn't much, but it was proof. She was real. With the name, he unleashed his resources. 3 investigators. Unlimited funds. Every Elizabeth Wren in the state was cross-checked, but none matched. Some leads flickered, then went cold. Her identity, like everything else about her, was wrapped in shadows. He began searching himself. He drove aimlessly through neighborhoods she might have lived in, cafes that felt like her, parks where someone like her might have walked. Every blonde passerby made his chest tighten. Every bookstore made him pause. He told himself he wasn't obsessed. But when you lose something you never really held, it doesn't let go easily. He started collecting old photos of the library from city archives, zooming in, frame by frame, hoping for a glimpse of her in the background. Her face never appeared. Then, one morning, a plain envelope appeared under the door of his townhouse. No return address, no postage, just his name in black ink. Inside, one photograph. A woman, her back turned, standing in a vast sunflower field, her blonde hair loose, caught in the wind. No face, no location. And a torn book page with a message scrawled in blue ink. Some things are meant to vanish before they're ruined. No name, no date, but he knew it was from her. It was all he had. It should have been closure, but it wasn't. It was gasoline, and he was already on fire. He studied the photograph for days. The light, the landscape, the tilt of her shoulders. It wasn't just a picture, it was a puzzle. Behind her, a weathered fence, a leaning red barn, and a sliver of a white church steeple peeking from a tree line. Details invisible to most, but not to a man who'd built his empire decoding data. He ran image traces, satellite comparisons, color analysis. His team mapped sunflower fields across 4 states. The red barn narrowed it. The steeple confirmed it. After a week of sleepless nights, he had a name, a forgotten farming town in upstate New York. Population, 612. No cell service, no billboards, no noise. He didn't send his assistant. He didn't fly in on his helicopter. He drove, alone, 8 hours, windows down. No phone, just the photograph folded in his breast pocket, warming with his heartbeat. The road narrowed, forests thickened, until finally, he passed a hand-painted sign, "Welcome to Meadow Lake." It looked like time had stopped there. A single diner, a hardware store, a white church like the one in the photo, and surrounding it, all fields of sunflowers swaying like they knew him. He parked and walked. No guards, no noise. Just the soft crunch of gravel under his shoes. He asked no one. He didn't want to disturb whatever life she had chosen. But he watched. For 3 days, he stayed in the only inn in town, blending into a world that didn't know billionaires or algorithms. He sat on park benches, walked dirt roads, and watched the fields each dusk. Nothing. Then, on the 4th morning, he saw her dot far across the field, carrying a basket. Blonde hair pulled into a loose braid, wearing a denim shirt and boots coated with dust, the same calm in her steps, but different, lighter, freer. He stood frozen behind the fence. She never turned, never noticed, just disappeared behind the barn, like a ghost slipping into its past. He didn't follow. Instead, he returned to the inn, packed his bag, and left before noon. No message, no attempt. He had his answer. She was alive. She had chosen to vanish. To escape. And for once, he chose not to consume, not to interfere, not to ruin. He drove home slowly, the image of her in the sunflower field etched into him deeper than any memory. It was the first time he'd ever walked away from something he wanted. He returned to the city a different man, but the ache didn't fade. Some absences never do.